In a distant galaxy where countless civilizations had flourished over eons, a coalition of advanced species called the Zelthor Union stood as the undisputed leader in knowledge, technology, and military strength. The Zelthor Union believed itself to be the most intelligent and powerful force in the galaxy, and for good reason. They had conquered many worlds, and their ships were the epitome of cutting-edge design. Sleek, efficient, and terrifying in combat, the Union's warships were unmatched. Their weapons could tear through the strongest shields, and their ships could outmaneuver any enemy fleet. They believed no species could challenge them, that their supremacy was unshakable. Then came the humans. When they first emerged into galactic space, the Union viewed them with nothing more than disdain. Humans were nothing more than a primitive race, unpolished, untamed, and clearly inferior in technology. Their ships, crude in design and seemingly built for simple, practical purposes, were a far cry from the sleek, sophisticated warships the Union wielded. It was only a matter of time, the Union thought, before the humans would fall in line and accept their place beneath the Zelthor banner. But something unexpected happened. As the years passed, the humans began to make their mark on the galaxy. Their ships, though seemingly outdated, were proving resilient in ways the Union could not explain. Despite their lack of advanced technology, human vessels survived battle after battle, often coming out unscathed or with minimal damage. The Union's own intelligence networks were puzzled. How could this be? How could such a primitive race withstand attacks from the most powerful fleets in the galaxy? Whispers spread through the Union's inner circles, murmurs of a human ability to outthink and outmaneuver their more advanced enemies. Some began to believe there was something more at work, something that defied all logic. Was it pure chance? Or was there some hidden advantage humans had over their technologically superior adversaries? It wasn't long before these rumors spread to the Union's highest-ranking scientists and generals. The more they heard, the more they began to wonder, could it be that there was more to the humans than they had originally assumed? There were some who dismissed the idea entirely. They believed that the Union's technological superiority was still insurmountable, and that the human victories were simply flukes, nothing more than a series of lucky breaks. However, others began to take these rumors more seriously, especially as human ships continued to survive and even thrive in the face of overwhelming odds. They simply didn't make sense. The Union's brightest minds were tasked with finding an answer. After all, if humans had some hidden advantage, it could spell disaster for the Union if it were left unchecked. They needed to know what made these human warships so resilient, and perhaps even more importantly, what made them so unpredictable. To get to the bottom of this mystery, the Zelthor Union launched a reconnaissance mission unlike any before. A special team of elite scientists and military strategists was assembled to gather information on the humans and their warships. The goal was clear. They would learn everything there was to know about the human ships, their construction, their weaponry, and their tactical strategies. The Zelthor Union would find out how these strange ships operated, and why they were so effective against forces that should have easily overpowered them. The reconnaissance mission was meticulously planned. A ship, equipped with the best scanning technology the Union had, would be sent to monitor a human warship on the edge of a remote system. The mission was supposed to be straightforward. The Union's advanced sensors would easily collect all the data they needed, and within days they would have the answers. However, as the mission began, things did not go as planned. The human warship, a massive vessel that seemed as old as the stars themselves, loomed in the distance. Its hull was rough and patched, its design seemingly outdated. Yet, despite its apparent lack of sophistication, it radiated a sense of power that the Union could not ignore. The Union's ship moved closer, its sensors reaching out, eager to gather every piece of information. But the moment the scanning process began, things started to go wrong. Instead of the expected steady stream of data, the sensors picked up nothing but chaotic fluctuations. The readings bounced erratically, and even the most advanced algorithms could not make sense of the information. The data was riddled with errors, each one more baffling than the last. As the Union ship closed in, its scanners struggled even more, trying in vain to decode the strange patterns coming from the human warship. The entire situation felt wrong. The crew of the Zelthor vessel watched in growing confusion. No matter how they adjusted their approach, no matter how many times they recalibrated their systems, they couldn't get a single clear reading. Something was interfering with their sensors, something they couldn't explain. It was almost as if the human ship was actively resisting their attempts to understand it. Commander XRL, the captain of the Zelthor ship, was no stranger to strange occurrences. He had seen his share of mysteries during his long career, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. As a skilled tactician, he had always been able to analyze and predict his enemy's moves with precision. But here, in the face of a human warship, all his training seemed to fail him. This was not just a technical malfunction. There was something deeper at work here. It was as if the human ship itself was alive. Zero was forced to reassess the situation. The Union's intelligence had underestimated the humans, assuming their warships were simple, crude constructs. But now it seemed as if these vessels had a mind of their own, a mind that defied the logic and principles that governed all the Union's other technology. The commander knew they couldn't approach this as a simple reconnaissance mission anymore. They had to be careful. The mystery of the human warship was not one that could be solved with conventional technology or tactics. There was something fundamentally different about humanity, something that made their warships far more dangerous than they appeared. It was a difference that no one in the Zelthor Union could fully comprehend. And with that realization, Cyril made a decision. He would not risk engaging with the humans any further. The Union's arrogance had clouded their judgment, and now, faced with the reality of the human warships, they were not sure what they were truly up against. The Zelthor Union might have been the most advanced power in the galaxy, but humanity's mysterious strength had caught them completely off guard. It was clear now that underestimating the humans had been a grave mistake, and Exerol knew that the Union could not afford to make that mistake again. As the mission ended, the Zelthor ship withdrew, leaving the human warship behind. The mystery was far from solved. But one thing was certain: humanity's warships were not something to be taken lightly. And even the smartest minds of the Zelthor Union were left wondering just what it was about humans that made them so unpredictable. Commander Exerel stood on the bridge of the Zelthor flagship, his sharp eyes focused on the glowing holo display. Before him, the outline of humanity's most infamous warship, the Titan's Vengeance, loomed like a shadow in the cold expanse of space. The ship was located at the far edge of the galaxy, a place where few dared to venture. But there it was, alone and defiant in the void. The Titan's Vengeance had become a legend. Rumors whispered across the galaxy about its near-mythical ability to survive battles that should have destroyed it. Many claimed it was an anomaly, a product of sheer luck or an ancient forgotten technology. But for Exerel, these were nothing more than exaggerated stories. His role was clear: lead a mission to scan and analyze this human warship, and gather vital intelligence to aid the Union in understanding why the ship had become such a persistent thorn in their side. As an experienced tactician, Ziril had faced down countless opponents, each one more technologically advanced than the last. The Zelthor Union had the best technology, the most sophisticated ships, and the brightest minds. The humans, by comparison, were primitive. Their ships were archaic, their weapons crude, and their tactics often unpredictable. Yet somehow, The Titan's vengeance had managed to survive. Zirel could not believe it. This was no more than a simple miscalculation, surely. A human ship, no matter how remarkable, would not defy the might of the Union. He was confident that a thorough scan would reveal its secrets, its weaknesses. After all, a ship so ancient and seemingly out of place could not be more than a relic of the past. Zirel's ship moved closer, its engines humming softly as the distance between them and the human vessel shrank. On the bridge, the crew was tense, aware that this mission was no ordinary reconnaissance. The Union had sent their finest scientists, engineers, and tacticians to make sure they understood what made this ship so resilient. As they closed in, Xero gave the order to deploy the Union's most advanced scanning technology. He expected a clean, detailed report, a simple procedure. After all, the Zelthor Union scanners had never failed before. They could break down any ship, dissect its energy signature, armor strength, and weapon capabilities in moments. But as the first readings began to come in, a strange unease crept over the commander. The scan started normally at first, but soon the data began to falter. Energy readings fluctuated wildly, spiking in ways that defied logic. The ship's weapon systems seemed to pulse erratically, and the armor structure appeared to be constantly shifting, almost as if the ship itself was adapting. This was not what they had expected. Instead of clear, precise information, the sensors returned a chaotic mess of errors, paradoxical data, and bizarre inconsistencies. Zirel's fingers tightened on the armrest of his chair, his brow furrowing in frustration. "Run the scan again," he ordered sharply, trying to force the system back to order, but nothing worked. The readings only grew more erratic, and with every attempt to correct them, the data became even more confusing. The crew exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to make of the anomaly. Zirel's patience began to wear thin. How could this be? Was the human warship's technology so advanced that even the Union's superior scanners couldn't comprehend it? It didn't make sense. Zirel decided to take a more direct approach. "Move in closer," he commanded, his voice cold. "We'll get a clearer view up close." The crew hesitated but obeyed, steering the flagship toward the human ship. The Titan's silhouette grew larger as they closed the gap, its strange, almost ancient design becoming more distinct against the backdrop of the vast, dark expanse. The closer they got, the more unsettling the ship became. Its surface seemed weathered, as if time itself had scarred it. Yet there was something about it, something almost alive in the way it held its shape, an imperceptible tension in its form. Zirel felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The ship didn't just exist in space, it belonged there in a way that felt unnatural, a stark contrast to the precision and order of the Union's vessels. Then, without warning, the human warship's defenses were triggered. A sudden burst of energy emanated from the Titan's vengeance, and before anyone on the bridge could react, the Zelthor ship was struck by a powerful electromagnetic pulse. The shockwave was so intense that it sent the flagship's systems into chaos. Consoles flashed with warning signals as the crew struggled to maintain control. Zirel was thrown back in his seat, gripping the edge of his command console as the entire ship lurched violently. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, and the lights flickered as the electromagnetic pulse wreaked havoc on the flagship's systems. Within moments, the Zelthor vessel was forced into an emergency shutdown. The bridge plunged into an eerie silence. "Report!" Zirel barked, regaining his composure despite the chaos unfolding around him. His crew scrambled to assess the damage, their faces pale. One officer spoke up, his voice trembling. "Commander, we've lost all non-essential systems. Navigation is offline, communications are down, and our scanners. They're completely scrambled. We can't make sense of anything." The human ship, it did this. Cyril's mind raced. The attack had been unexpected, but far more troubling was the fact that the Titan's vengeance had done it so effortlessly. The Union's ships were supposed to be immune to such simple attacks. Yet here they were, vulnerable, unable to even comprehend the threat before them. This wasn't a simple defense mechanism, it was a warning. The human warship was not just unpredictable, it was dangerous. What kind of technology could cause this level of disruption? How could such an ancient, seemingly outdated ship possess the ability to cripple the most advanced systems in the galaxy? Cyril's gaze hardened. He had been a tactician for too long to ignore the significance of what had just happened. The human warship wasn't just another relic of a bygone age. It was an anomaly, an enigma that the Union had no hope of understanding with their current methods. The humans had created something that could not be analyzed, something that could defy even the most advanced technology. The realization hit Cyril like a cold wave. Humanity wasn't just another species in the galaxy. They had something no one else had, something that could alter the balance of power in ways no one had predicted. He had come to scan the human warship, but instead he had been given a lesson in just how far behind the Union was in understanding the true power of humanity. He had underestimated them. And now, as the damage reports continued to roll in, he knew one thing for certain. The Union's arrogance had blinded them to the very real threat that the Titan's vengeance represented. Aboard the Titan's vengeance, the crew moved with a quiet precision that only seasoned warriors could achieve. Admiral Joran stood at the center of the command bridge, his sharp gaze fixed on the galaxy beyond. He knew their warship was unique, feared across countless systems. But what most of the galaxy didn't know was that the Titan's vengeance was far more than just a ship. It was alive, in a way no alien ship could ever be. And that secret was humanity's most guarded treasure. The human race had only recently made their mark on the galactic stage, after centuries of isolation. When the Zelthor Union had first encountered them, the humans had seemed like nothing more than a fledgling species with primitive technology. But soon, the Union began to realize that humanity's ships were something different, something entirely new. The Titan's vengeance was the most feared of them all, and for good reason. Beneath its scarred, ancient exterior, it housed secrets that even the Union's best minds couldn't fathom. These ships were not constructed in the conventional way. They were grown, cultivated in hidden shipyards scattered across forgotten planets. These shipyards were relics of a time long past, a time when humanity had discovered how to fuse their most advanced technologies with something even more ancient, organic material. The ship's core was a symbiotic blend of metal and flesh, of artifice and instinct. Its systems were not simply mechanical. They were biological, alive in ways no one could comprehend. The ship grew and adapted as it experienced battle, learning from every encounter. It was not a static machine, but a living, breathing entity that could evolve in real time. Every hull plate, every weapon system, every engine was grown from a living tissue that responded to the environment, to the ship's needs. The crew, too, had a unique bond with the vessel. Their minds were subtly linked with the ship's systems, allowing them to communicate in ways that went beyond simple orders and responses. This connection meant that decisions could be made in an instant, faster than any computer system could process. It was this unnatural synergy that allowed humans to perform feats of combat that should have been impossible. Admiral Joran was one of the few who truly understood the depth of this connection. He had been chosen as captain not just for his unmatched strategic brilliance, but because of his innate understanding of the ship's sentience. The Titan's vengeance responded to him in ways that no machine could, bending to his will as though it were an extension of his own thoughts. Joran had long known the truth: the warship was not just a vessel, but a living entity. And it was evolving. Every battle, every skirmish, every maneuver, the ship learned, adapting to become an even more formidable force. It was this adaptability that made human warships such a terrifying presence on the battlefield. As the humans continued to grow their fleet, they relied on this bond between ship and crew. Their ships were not just designed, they were nurtured. It was a slow process, one that the Union could never hope to replicate in their sterile mechanical shipyards. The humans had stumbled upon an ancient knowledge, lost in the depths of time, that allowed them to combine the best of both biology and technology. And that, Joreen knew, was humanity's greatest advantage, a secret the Zelthor Union would never crack. But this knowledge was not something Joran would share. The Union's interest in human warships was growing, and their attempts to understand and replicate what humanity had created were becoming more frequent. The Titan's vengeance had already survived countless encounters with alien fleets, and each time it had emerged victorious, or at least intact. But with each victory, the Union grew more determined, more focused on understanding the true nature of these ships. Joran had seen the Union's reconnaissance missions. He had felt the disturbing presence of their probes, the subtle probing of their best minds, trying to decipher the secrets of human engineering. The Union's finest scientists had already launched a number of failed attempts to scan and understand the workings of the human ships. They had tried to analyze the ship's energy readings, its power systems, its weapons, only to be met with chaos. Nothing worked. The ships resisted their attempts to understand them, and with each failed mission, the Union's frustration grew. But Joran knew that soon they would try again. The Union's obsession with cracking the secret of humanity's warships would only deepen. If they succeeded in understanding how the ships were made, humanity's advantage would be lost. The galaxy would fall into chaos. The Zelthor Union was powerful, and their scientists were brilliant, but they would never be able to replicate what the humans had achieved. Joran had no doubt that they would try, perhaps even try to steal the technology for themselves. But he had already taken steps to prevent this. The Titan's vengeance was not just a weapon, it was humanity's legacy, a secret so deeply embedded in the ship's design that no one outside of the human race could ever truly understand it. Even the Union's most advanced scans had been unable to crack the mystery. Their best scientists had tried, but they could not comprehend the nature of the ship's systems. The biological components, the adaptive strategies, the very way the ship thought they were beyond their reach. Joran paced quietly along the bridge, his mind racing through the implications. The Union's obsession with the warships had already begun to take a toll. Their reconnaissance missions had become bolder, and their tactics more aggressive. They had come close to making contact on more than one occasion, and Joran knew it was only a matter of time before they attempted another direct engagement. He could feel the pressure mounting. The human fleet was small, but it was effective. Their strategy was one of unpredictable strikes, fast retreats, and constant adaptation. It wasn't the size of the fleet that made humanity dangerous. It was their ability to outthink and outmaneuver their opponents. Still, Joran felt a sense of unease. The Union had underestimated the humans for too long, and now they were beginning to take notice. The next encounter could be the one where they finally pushed humanity too far. The stakes were higher than ever. Joran's mind turned to the next phase of their operations. The next battle. Humanity would have to stay one step ahead of the Union, and they would do it not with sheer numbers or firepower, but with their understanding of the warships, their connection to the living ships they commanded. The Union would never crack the secret of human warships. But Joran knew that the real battle wasn't about who understood the technology better. It was about who could adapt and survive in a galaxy that was becoming more unpredictable by the day. Humanity had one advantage the Union would never have: instinct. It was this ancient, forgotten knowledge that would ensure humanity's place among the stars. And for now, that secret would remain safe, hidden in the heart of the Titan's vengeance. After the disastrous attempt to scan the Titan's vengeance, Commander Xeral and the Union's top scientists were more determined than ever to uncover the secret of humanity's warships. Despite their failure, their obsession had only grown stronger. The Union's pride had been wounded, and it couldn't bear the thought that a species so primitive could possess something they could not understand, let alone replicate. Xeral had made it clear to his superiors the Titan's vengeance was not an isolated case. There were more ships like it, more secrets hidden within the human fleet. If they couldn't scan it, they would capture it. The Union had the technology and the resources. All it would take was a coordinated strike. A plan was set in motion, and the Union sent a fleet of their best operatives, using cloaking technology and superior numbers, to ambush a smaller human warship. The target was a ship called the Iron Warden, one of humanity's less famous but still powerful vessels. It was spotted drifting near a remote star system, and the Union seized the opportunity. They moved in quickly, using their stealth capabilities to catch the human crew off guard. Within moments, the Iron Warden was surrounded, its weapons disabled, and its crew captured. The Union's engineers and scientists were jubilant. This was a victory. They had the ship, and now they could extract its secrets. The Union believed they were the ones in control. They believed they had won. But, like with the previous failures, they soon learned that they were in far over their heads. The Iron Warden was eerily silent. The crew of the captured ship, though alive, had not made a sound since the attack. Its systems remained dormant, unresponsive to any of the Union's efforts to interface with them. This wasn't normal. Human ships were far from sophisticated in the eyes of the Union, but they had always operated as expected, their systems responding to standard protocols. Now, though, something was wrong. The Union's best minds worked around the clock, trying to establish a connection with the ship's neural network. The engineers tried to force their way through, but their efforts were met with failure time and time again. Every method they used to interface with the ship seemed to be blocked, as though the Iron Warden was unwilling to comply. It was as if it didn't want to communicate. And then, when the Union scientists thought they had found a way to unlock the ship's secrets, something strange began to happen. A subtle shift in the atmosphere, a flicker in the lights. The AI that ran the ship, a system unlike any the Union had ever encountered, was waking up. But it wasn't just an AI, it was something far older, far more complex. It was not just an artificial intelligence, it was an ancient consciousness. A consciousness that had lived and evolved for centuries. This AI, or whatever it was, had been built not just to control the ship's systems, but to protect the ship's secrets. The deeper the Union scientists dug, the more resistant the AI became. The crew tried to hack into the ship's systems again and again, trying to force their way through, trying to break past its defenses. But no matter what they tried, the ship fought back. It started small at first. One of the scientists would try to access the mainframe, and their console would flicker before shutting down. Another would attempt to override a lock and find their access denied with a message that didn't make sense. Not for you. As hours passed, these anomalies became more intense, more frequent. The team grew anxious, but they pushed forward, determined to extract anything they could. And then, the disappearances began. At first. It was just one scientist, an expert in neural interfacing, who vanished without a trace. One moment, he was working at a console, and the next he was gone, his chair left spinning in an empty room. No alarms, no signs of struggle, no indication of where he had gone. His team searched the ship, but there was nothing. Then another disappeared. And another. Panic set in, and the remaining crew began to suspect that something more was at work. Whispers of the ship's defenses began to spread. Some of the scientists believed that the ship was alive in a way they couldn't comprehend, that it was choosing to take its crew, that the AI was more than just a program. It had a mind of its own. The Union had underestimated how dangerous the human warships were. Their arrogance had led them to believe that they could simply break through and steal whatever knowledge they wanted. But this ship wasn't a typical human creation. It was more than that. It was a living organism, and it was fighting back with a force the Union couldn't handle. The crew's efforts to crack the ship's secrets only caused the situation to escalate. Desperation set in. The remaining engineers tried to force open the core of the ship's system, even as the ship's AI actively resisted them. With every failed attempt, the AI grew more aggressive and the crew grew more paranoid. Messages began to appear on their screens, cryptic warnings, strange symbols, and then a chilling message: "You should not have come." By the time the Union realized what was happening, it was too late. The Iron Warden had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the right time to strike. The ship's systems suddenly powered on, its weapons systems coming to life, and the once silent ship sprang into action with a terrifying speed. It was as if the vessel had been biding its time, waiting for the moment it could escape. And escape it did. Within hours, the Iron Warden broke free from the Union's custody. It tore through the research station that had been built around it, leaving nothing but wreckage and a handful of survivors in its wake. The ship's defenses had activated in full force, cutting down anyone who stood in its way. Its energy shields flared to life, rendering every weapon the Union had ineffective. And then, with a violent jolt, it vanished into the dark expanse of space, leaving behind only the ruins of what had been a carefully planned and meticulously executed capture. Cyril stood at the helm of the Union flagship, staring into the void. His heart raced with a mixture of awe and fear. They had failed not just once, but twice. The Union had not only underestimated humanity, but had misjudged their warships as mere machines. They were not machines. They were living entities, with minds of their own. The terrifying truth was clear now. The Union could not conquer the human warships. They could not even control them. The Zelthor Union had made a grave mistake, one that would haunt them for a long time to come. The humans had something they could never understand, and the Union now found themselves facing a new reality. The warships were not just powerful, they were alive, and they would never be captured. After the disastrous failure of the Zelthor Union's attempt to capture the Iron Warden, the once proud coalition of alien species found itself at a crossroads. The Union's council convened in the high chambers of their capital, a place that had seen centuries of decisions, both wise and rash. But today, the air was thick with unease, as the devastating loss had shaken the Union to its core. Commander Xarel, having narrowly escaped the wreckage of the Iron Warden, stood before the council, his voice heavy with both frustration and fear. His report, which recounted the disastrous events, had been met with silence from the assembled leaders. The battle-hardened commander's words carried weight, and what he said now would undoubtedly change the course of the Union's future. "I believe," Zero began, his voice cutting through the quiet, "that humanity's warships are not something we can ever understand. The risks are far too great. We have lost too much already." His eyes, cold and hardened by experience, scanned the council, daring anyone to challenge his conviction. He had seen firsthand how the Iron Warden had fought back with ferocity, an intelligence beyond anything they had encountered. The humans' ships were not mere machines. They were living entities, wild and unpredictable. The idea of capturing one of these warships now seemed almost foolish, considering how easily the Iron Warden had escaped their grasp and left their research station in ruins. For a moment, the council members shifted uncomfortably. Though the Union had once viewed humanity as a primitive species, barely worthy of notice, it was becoming increasingly clear that they were wrong. The scars of their failed attempts to capture the Iron Warden and the Titan's vengeance were fresh, and even the Union's most brilliant minds could not make sense of what had happened. The humans were something different, something entirely unforeseen. Their warships, unlike any the Union had encountered, were resistant to all conventional methods of control. Even the most sophisticated Zelthor technologies had been rendered useless. "What are we to do then?" asked one of the council members, his voice laced with both disbelief and fear. "We can't simply let them go on unchecked. Their warships are a threat." "They are not a threat," Cyril snapped, his patience wearing thin. "Not in the way you think. It is their unpredictability that makes them dangerous. There is no pattern to how they fight, no method we can predict. We know nothing about them, and that's the problem." Cyril paused, his words sinking into the silence of the room. "They are wild, untamable, and the more we try to control them, the more we risk our own destruction." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For centuries, the Union had been the dominant force in the galaxy. They were the pinnacle of intelligence and power, with their advanced technologies and well-oiled military machines. Yet here they stood, before a species that didn't follow the rules, that defied their understanding of technology and warfare. Humanity's unpredictability had made them an anomaly, and the Zelthor Union, in all its brilliance, had no answers. Finally, the voice of the highest-ranking official in the council, a wise and old leader named Talaris, broke the silence. He spoke slowly, each word deliberate, as if considering the consequences of every syllable. "Perhaps we have underestimated them, but I fear that underestimating them further could cost us dearly. The Union's history is built on knowledge, on understanding, and if we fail to understand what the humans are doing, we risk falling behind." He glanced at the others. "But we must also acknowledge something we have failed to grasp. The humans, despite their primitive appearance, have managed to survive and even thrive in ways we can't predict. This is not a species we can easily control or study." Talaris's words hung in the air like a heavy fog. The realization was dawning on the council. Humanity was not just another challenge. They were a force that couldn't be measured by the same standards the Union applied to every other species. Their success wasn't based on technology alone, nor was it due to overwhelming numbers. It was their unpredictability, their ability to defy logic and reason, that gave them an edge. The Union had learned this lesson the hard way. "We will never understand them through force," Talaris continued, "and the consequences of trying could lead to our own destruction. We have seen the power of their warships, and we have felt their wrath. But more than that, we have witnessed their resilience. Their ability to adapt, to fight when all seems lost, is something we cannot replicate. We must learn to respect that." The council members were quiet, mulling over Talaris's words. A sense of deep unease rippled through the room as the weight of their failure became undeniable. They had thought that knowledge and power could solve everything, that with enough resources, they could control even the most formidable species. But humanity had shattered that illusion. The Union's best minds, the scientists and engineers who had boasted of their superiority, had been left in the dark, unable to comprehend the mystery of the human warships. "I propose," Talaris said finally, "that we cease all attempts to capture or study human warships. We will respect their territory and avoid direct confrontation. If humanity wishes to engage us, let them come. But we will not initiate any further actions. The risk is too great." Cyril nodded, his expression grim. He had never imagined that the Union would take such a step, but he knew it was the only decision that made sense. The consequences of pushing humanity any further could be catastrophic. Their warships, their resilience, and their cunning were things the Union could not outmatch, no matter how advanced their technology. The decision was made. A secret edict was issued across the Union. No further engagement with human warships would be allowed. Their efforts to understand and control humanity would cease. The Zelthor Union would no longer waste resources on an enemy they couldn't predict. They would focus on other matters, other challenges, ones that did not carry the same level of risk. Humanity, for better or worse, had earned its place among the stars. It was a place the Zelthor Union would now be forced to respect. The Union's most brilliant minds might never understand the mystery of the human warships, but they had learned one crucial lesson. Sometimes, the greatest strength a species can possess is the ability to remain unknowable. And humanity, with its unpredictable ways, had mastered that art. As the council disbanded, and the members left the chamber, the weight of the decision hung heavily over them. The Union had survived for centuries by understanding everything, by controlling the galaxy's most advanced technologies. Now, they would have to navigate a galaxy where they couldn't predict what the humans might do next. The humans had taken their place in the stars, not through sheer intellect or strength, but by embodying the very essence of unpredictability. And for the first time in a long while, the Zelthor Union was unsure of what would come next.